As you journey to your unlimited, I encourage you to dream big. Join me as I show you how. Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Oneeka Williams and welcome to the Dream Big series. Thank you for joining us. Today we are going to be talking about the D in Dream Big, which the D is for discipline. Do you ever find yourself in a situation where there's a goal that you've set and you just don't seem to be getting it done? You just don't seem to be able to accomplish your goals. Do you feel like you know that you could do it, but there's a sense of just beating yourself up because you just don't seem to be able to get it done? You know, during my training as a surgical resident at the Mass General Hospital, one of my assignments was being the resident in the cardiac intensive care unit. This unit was a very intense place to be. Our patients were extremely sick. They were coming directly up from the operating room, having just had coronary artery bypass grafting or some type of cardiac heart valve replacement. And so they came up intubated, lines everywhere, IV drips, chest tubes, medications running in to keep their blood pressure up and their hearts going. And this required my presence for 24 hours from 6 a.m. one day to 6 a.m. the next day, tending to their needs and taking care of them. And one would imagine that when that was done at 6 a.m. the following day after a grueling 24 hours, it would be time for me to shut it down and go home and sleep. But guess what? That was not how we trained. On the following day, after those 24 hours of grueling care, my responsibility as the junior resident was that I needed to harvest the vein, the very vein that was used for that coronary artery bypass grafting. Well, guess who was the one on the leg taking that vein out so that the cardiac surgeons could use it? That sounds simple, right? But guess what? The cardiac surgeons were a bunch who were impatient, who were efficient, who were about the business of doing the surgery as quickly as possible. So once that patient was intubated and it was ready, set, go, I was on a race against time. If I did not get that vein out of that patient's leg and close before that patient went on bypass, you know what happened? I would have to sit there in that operating room and wait until the cardiac surgeon was done with the surgery in the heart and remove the patient from bypass before I could close the leg. And what did that mean for me? Precious hours of sleep time that I was going to try to somehow be able to snatch just before the next surgery went was sacrificed, and I would lose the opportunity to get some rest in between those surgeries. So what that meant for me is that I actually had to develop the discipline of preparing for those surgeries. I needed to make sure that my knots were tight. I needed to make sure that I understood the anatomy. I needed to make sure that I understood exactly what I needed to do and discipline myself by practicing over and over again so that my skills were sharply honed, that when that cardiac surgeon said go, I could move quickly, get that vein out of the leg, close that leg up, and be out of that operating room to catch my couple Z's before it was time for the next surgery. So what does that mean for you? How does that apply to your life? Is there something that you want to achieve, but that you're just afraid? There's a fear of doing it. It just seems like it's so overwhelming. It just seems like it's just such a gargantuan, it just seems like it's such an enormous task that you just can't kind of get to the act of actually doing it. And then it just seems like the whole task just seems so complicated. It just seems like it's easier not to do it. What does discipline look like? I mean, discipline really helps you when the situation arises. It prepares you to think on your feet. It prepares you to almost go into autopilot. It really prepares you that when you are in the situation, you have the skills that you need. What does it look like? What is possible after you develop the discipline? Where does discipline lead? What is the price that you pay if you don't actually pursue those tasks, pursue those goals, because you have not developed the discipline to do so? What does it feel like when you are more confident, when you become more efficient? The same way that as I began to do more and more of those surgeries, I could actually attack them with a degree of confidence, knowing that I had the discipline to be able to achieve that goal. We're not born with discipline. You can think of yourself as, what does it look like when you're a baby? You're born and you have to depend on the external boundaries that are set by your parents. You have to depend on the external parameters, on the external training, on the skills that your parents help you to develop, the skills that your teachers help you to develop. So it's a process of learning. And don't worry if you don't know what it's like to develop a set of disciplines. If you don't have an inkling of the first place to start, if you develop a discipline, it is possible for you to become more disciplined. And I am going to share with you some of the tactics and the tools that I have used that have helped me in my pursuits and accomplishing my goals, and specifically even in that situation with becoming more proficient at extracting and harvesting that vein. I am going to share some of those things with you today. What are some of the things that you can do to become more disciplined? I think the first thing that you can do is list those situations where you feel that you're not meeting those goals and objectives because you have not developed those disciplines. Reflect on what's holding you back. Many of us know the things that we're afraid of. Many of us know the things that just intimidate us. So be honest with yourself. Sit down. Don't judge yourself. Just make a list of what are some of the insights that you have that are holding you back. When you get from there, then really step back and think, what would it feel like if you were able to overcome those fears, those feelings of being overwhelmed, and develop the discipline to help you to get to your goal? And each of us have had those experiences where there's something that we have just felt, gosh, I just can't do that. And I procrastinate until you get to the point where you don't have a choice. And do you remember that feeling of accomplishment, that feeling of, wow, that was not as hard as I thought? Simulate these contents. Remember and try to list what are the actual actionable things that you need to acquire. What is the knowledge that you need to acquire? What are the things that you need to prepare? And establish the discipline around how it is that you're going to be able to acquire those things. Tap into the desires of your heart. Identify what are the things that are important to you. Why do you care about them? Why do you want to make a difference? And make sure that you list those things. You put them on the mirror. You surround yourself with the notes, with the reminders of these types of things. And then when you start doing that, what you will begin to understand, what you will begin to experience, is that the resistance that seemed to be in place, that were hindering and that were providing these obstacles from you achieving your goals, from you getting started on the journey to work on those goals, that you will find that those inner resistances begin to become less and less, and you become just much more excited. You become much more enthusiastic. You become much more propelled forward, that every step that you take, that you develop a discipline that encourages yourself to know that you can do it, that propels you forward to the next step, as you acquire each period, each part, each task that acquires that development of the discipline that then becomes really and truly a habit. It then becomes something that is automatic, that you internalize, and you can then apply very easily without even thinking it to the things in your life that helps you to accomplish the goals. So discipline is an integral part of that work, and you can do it. Just think of Dr. Williams harvesting those veins so she can get some sleep, and I did it. And if I did it through the discipline to become more confident and more efficient and effective, so can you. Thank you for joining me today. This is Dr. Oneeka Williams on the Dream Big series, focusing on the D of the dream, which is discipline. Thank you.